Outside the club, the rain had soaked through everything, and Sophia Bennett had been sitting alone on the curb for 40 minutes. Her wheelchair's battery had died somewhere around midnight. Her friends, 3 drinks deep and not paying close attention, had gone ahead to the next venue without realizing she wasn't behind them. Her phone was at 4%. The rideshare app kept timing out because the area was too crowded for any driver to commit to the pickup. People walked past her, not unkindly, just past. The specific way crowds move past anything that requires more attention than they're prepared to give on a Friday night. Jake Mercer noticed her because he had parked his truck across the street to grab food before his late shift. And something about the stillness of her, sitting upright in the rain, not moving, clearly waiting for something that wasn't coming, caught his attention in a way the rest of the crowd had managed not to. He crossed the street. He asked if she needed help. She looked up at him with the specific, tired wariness of someone who had been offered help before that turned out to be something else entirely. He didn't move closer. He just waited. She told him her chair had died and her friends were gone and she needed to get home. He didn't ask why she was alone. He didn't ask what had happened. He went and got his truck, helped her in with a chair folded in the back, and drove her home using the address she gave him with the specific, careful trust of someone deciding, in real time, to take a chance on a stranger. He expected, at most, a thank you at the door. What actually happened when the door opened was going to put him in a room 3 weeks later with one of the most powerful women in the country, and it was going to bring back a part of his life he had buried 6 years ago and never expected to touch again. Please like this video now. I'm genuinely asking you. Those likes matter so much for stories like this. Hit the button, subscribe too, completely free. Drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Now let me tell you who opened that door. Jake Mercer was 31 years old and worked as a mechanic at a garage on the east side of the city. Steady, skilled work that he had been doing for 6 years, ever since he had walked away from a different life that he didn't talk about with anyone, including the people closest to him. He had been, before the garage, an engineer. Not formally trained at the highest level, but genuinely talented in the specific way that mattered most. He understood mechanical systems intuitively, the kind of understanding that let him see solutions other trained engineers missed because they were looking too hard at the theory and not hard enough at the actual problem. At 23, he had been developing a mobility device, a powered wheelchair attachment designed to handle terrain that standard wheelchairs struggled with. Built initially as a passion project after watching his grandmother struggle with exactly that limitation. The prototype had been promising. He had secured a small amount of early-stage interest from a regional accelerator program. Then his father had gotten sick. The illness had been long, expensive, and had required Jake's complete attention for nearly 2 years. Caregiving, medical bills, the specific exhausting arithmetic of trying to keep someone you love alive while keeping yourself financially solvent enough to continue trying. He had liquidated everything connected to the device to pay for his father's care. The prototype, the early patent filings, the accelerator relationship, all of it, gone. Traded for time he would have traded anyway, without hesitation, but which had cost him a future he had once believed in completely. His father had died 18 months into the illness. Jake had taken the mechanic job because it paid reliably and required nothing of him beyond the actual work. No dreams to protect, no future to keep believing in. He had been doing it for 6 years. He did not talk about the device. He had told himself it belonged to a different person. Sophia Bennett was 26 and had been using a wheelchair since a skiing accident at 19, left her with a spinal injury that had ended the version of her life she had been building before it. She was sharp, funny in the specific dry way of people who have decided humor is more useful than self-pity, and exhausted, not physically, though that too, but exhausted in the particular way of someone who has spent 7 years being treated as a category rather than a person. People either avoided her entirely or overcorrected into a specific, suffocating kindness that had nothing to do with actually seeing her. The performative gentleness of people who wanted credit for being kind to a disabled person more than they wanted an actual relationship with her. Jake had done neither. He had simply helped, asked nothing, performed nothing, and driven her home with the easy, unremarkable competence of someone who treated the situation as ordinary because, to him, it was. She had noticed this immediately. She had not expected to notice it as much as she did. Her mother was Diane Bennett, the chief executive of Halcyon Industrial, a manufacturing and technology conglomerate with operations across 14 states and a reputation, in business circles, for being exacting, strategic, and entirely unsentimental in negotiations. She was also, underneath the public reputation, a mother who had spent 7 years watching her daughter navigate a world that consistently failed to accommodate her, and who had developed, as a result, a sharp and immediate suspicion of anyone who appeared in Sophia's life without an obvious explanation. When Sophia came through the door that night, soaked and exhausted, with an unfamiliar man helping carry her wheelchair inside, Diane's first instinct was not gratitude. It was alarm. Diane's reaction was immediate and entirely understandable, even if it was also, in the moment, unfair to Jake. She asked who he was. She asked why he was in her house. She positioned herself between Jake and Sophia with the specific protective instinct of a mother who had encountered, over the years, several people who had tried to take advantage of her daughter's circumstances in various small, exploitative ways. Jake did not argue. He explained, briefly and without defensiveness, what had happened: the dead battery, the friends who had left, the rain. He said he was about to leave and didn't need anything beyond knowing Sophia had gotten home safely. Diane told him to leave. Sophia, from her chair near the doorway, said something that stopped both of them. She said that in 7 years, Jake was the first stranger who had helped her without performing the helping, without narrating his own kindness, without needing her gratitude to feel good about himself, without treating her like something fragile that required managing, rather than a person who simply needed a ride. She said her mother needed to actually listen to that instead of reacting to it. Diane looked at her daughter. She looked at Jake. She did not apologize. Diane Bennett did not apologize easily, but she softened, fractionally, and asked his name properly. He told her. He left shortly after, without exchanging contact information, assuming the entire interaction had reached its natural and complete end. He did not expect to hear from either of them again. Diane could not stop thinking about the interaction. Not romantically, she was thinking about it as a mother, turning over the specific rarity of what her daughter had described. 7 years of overcorrection and avoidance from almost everyone, and one stranger who had simply treated Sophia as ordinary. She had the resources, professionally and personally, to find out more about people when she decided it mattered. She found out about Jake Mercer within 4 days. What she found surprised her: a 6-year employment history at the same garage, unremarkable on its surface. But beneath that, in records that took slightly more effort to access, she found a patent filing from 8 years earlier. A mobility device design, abandoned. The patent rights eventually lapsed when the filing fees went unpaid during a period that corresponded, exactly, to a death certificate for a man named Robert Mercer. She read the original patent filing. She was not, by training, an engineer, but she had spent 30 years around technology development, and she recognized, even in the dry technical language of a patent application, the specific quality of a genuinely good idea. She sat with the documents for a long time. She thought about her own company's mobility and accessibility division, modest, underfunded, exactly the kind of unit that existed on paper more than an actual investment priority. She thought about her daughter. She made a decision. Please like this video, I'm asking you. Those likes mean so much for stories like this. Hit the button. Subscribe if you haven't. Free. Throw up a comment right now. Where in the world are you watching from? Now the part where everything changes. Diane reached out to Jake through his employer, a professional, formal request for a meeting that gave him no indication of what it was actually about. He arrived at Halcyon Industrial's downtown offices expecting, at most, a follow-up thank you, or some kind of formal gesture related to the night he had driven Sophia home. He did not expect Diane to slide a copy of his abandoned patent filing across the table. He looked at it for a long moment. He had not seen the document in 6 years. He asked how she had found it. She told him directly she had been curious about who he was, had looked into his background, and had found something she believed deserved more than the quiet death it had been given. He told her the project was finished, that it had been finished the moment he needed the money it represented more than he needed the future it might have led to. That reopening it now, 6 years later, in a market that had moved considerably since his original design, felt less like an opportunity and more like reopening a wound that had finally closed. Diane listened to all of it without interrupting. Then she said something that he had not expected. She told him she wasn't asking him to revisit grief. She was offering him resources, funding, a development team, access to manufacturing capability that Halcyon already had, to finish something he had never actually finished by choice. He had finished it by necessity, under circumstances that had nothing to do with whether the idea itself was good. She told him the idea was good. She told him she had 30 years of experience recognizing good ideas, and that the only thing standing between his abandoned prototype and an actual product was the same thing that had taken it from him in the first place: resources he hadn't had and circumstances he hadn't chosen. Jake sat with this for a long time. He said he needed time to think about it. She said he could have whatever time he needed. He spent 2 weeks deciding. Not because the offer wasn't appealing, it was, in ways he hadn't let himself feel in years, but because reopening the project meant reopening the specific grief attached to it, the version of himself that had existed before his father's illness, the future he had quietly buried because grieving it actively had been more than he could manage alongside everything else. He talked to Sophia during those 2 weeks, not about the offer specifically at first, but in the ordinary way that two people who had genuinely liked each other from a single car ride continued finding reasons to stay in contact. She asked him, eventually, what he was deciding. He told her everything: the device, his father, the 6 years of mechanic work that asked nothing of him beyond competence. She listened the way he had listened to her in the truck that first night, without performing sympathy, without overcorrecting into pity, just genuinely present. She said, "You built something that could help people like me, and you're scared to find out if it still matters." He said that was exactly right. She said, "Find out anyway." He accepted Diane's offer 3 weeks after the night he drove Sophia home. What followed was 18 months of genuinely difficult, genuinely meaningful work, rebuilding the original design with current technology, refining the mechanics that had been promising but unfinished, working alongside an engineering team that treated his original instincts with the respect they deserved. The device that emerged was significantly more advanced than his original prototype, an all-terrain mobility attachment that could be retrofitted onto existing wheelchairs at a fraction of the cost of fully custom mobility solutions, opening genuine independence to people who had been priced out of the existing options entirely. Sophia tested an early version personally. She drove it across terrain that would have stopped her standard chair completely: a gravel path, a grassy incline, a curb cut that had been broken for years and that the city had never bothered fixing. She looked up at Jake afterward, breathing hard, grinning in a way he had not yet seen from her. She said, "This is going to change everything for so many people." He said, "That was the idea 6 years ago." She said, "The timing just needed to catch up to you." What had been developing between them, alongside the 18 months of work, had moved with the same quiet, unforced pace as everything else in their connection. Neither of them had rushed it. Both of them had recognized, somewhere in the early months, that what they had found in each other was rare enough to deserve patience rather than urgency. He proposed 2 years after the device launched. Not dramatically, in the workshop where they had spent so many late evenings together, surrounded by the prototypes and the genuinely real thing they had built from a 6-year-old abandoned idea. She said yes before he finished the question. The company they built together, Mercer Mobility, under Halcyon's larger umbrella but operated with Jake as founder and lead engineer, reached 40,000 units distributed within 3 years, with international expansion underway by the 4th. Diane attended every major milestone, not as an investor checking on returns, but as the mother who had recognized, in a single rain-soaked doorway encounter, that her daughter had found something worth protecting rather than something to be suspicious of. She told Jake once, at the company's 3rd anniversary event, that she had nearly sent him away that first night. He told her he understood completely. He said he would have done the same thing in her position. She said, "I'm glad I asked the second question instead of just the first." He asked what she meant. She said, "The first question was, 'Who are you?' The second was, 'Why does my daughter trust you?' I should have started with the second one." Jake Mercer crossed a street in the rain because something about a stranger's stillness caught his attention when an entire crowd had managed to walk past her without noticing. He expected a thank you. He got a closed door, a suspicious mother, a daughter who refused to let the moment be dismissed, and eventually, an entire life he had buried 6 years earlier, resurrected by someone who had taken the time to look past the surface of who he appeared to be. Diane Bennett almost sent him away. Sophia made sure she didn't. Here is the question I want to leave with you. Diane's first instinct was suspicion, protecting her daughter from a stranger she didn't know anything about. Some people will say that instinct was right and necessary, even if it almost cost Jake the most important opportunity of his life.